My name is Margaret Elkins. And the night I screamed about blood dripping from the ceiling fan, I knew exactly what I was doing. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is pretend to lose your mind. It happened during dinner. We were all at my sister Lillian's place, a cozy little colonial on Whitmore Lane, the kind with creaky floorboards and polished furniture passed down like heirlooms. My niece Ava was 17 at the time, bright-eyed and observant, always drawing things she wasn't supposed to see. My brother-in-law Richard, her father, sat at the head of the table carving roast beef like a surgeon. I remember the exact moment the glass slipped from my hand. I didn't drop it. I released it. A single intentional moment of chaos in a room full of artificial calm. It shattered loud enough to stop conversation. Ava jumped. Lillian gasped. Richard turned his head slowly, eyes narrowed just like I knew he would. I stood up slowly, pressing both palms flat on the table. And then I started laughing. Not a sweet laugh. Not even a bitter one. A laugh that spiraled a little too loud, a little too long. Then I whispered, "Do you see it?" Everyone stared. "It's dripping again. Right above your head. Blood. Just like before." Lillian's fork clattered to the plate. Ava whispered Aunt Maggie, but I didn't stop. I began tracing invisible shapes in the air, muttering things that sounded like riddles. Red turns black when it lies long enough. Do you remember her eyes? Her teeth were perfect. I walked around the table in a slow circle, dragging my fingertips across the wood. I knocked over a candle. Richard stood up. Enough. But I turned to Ava and crouched. Whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't go back to him, even if he smiles. Lillian pulled Ava away from me. Richard grabbed my arm, his voice sharp. She needs help. She's unwell. I let myself be pulled. I let the tears fall. And I let the mask of madness take over completely. Because if I didn't, Ava would never be safe. The ride to the hospital was quiet. I didn't resist when Lillian insisted I just get evaluated. I didn't speak until the intake nurse asked if I knew where I was. Beneath the house, I said, where the teeth are buried. They made notes. They used soft voices. They kept their distance. Textbook response, exactly what I wanted. By the second day, I was back home conditionally released and under family observation. Lillian offered to take me in, but I declined, insisted I was fine on my own. That was part of the plan. I needed to be at my house when Ava showed up. Because she would. Because I had made sure she'd be sent. And because what Richard had done was starting all over again. You see, this wasn't the first time I'd pretended. Years ago, 10 to be exact, I stood in a courthouse and swore under oath that I never saw what happened in the shed behind the school library. That I didn't know why the Davis girl vanished. That I believed it was drugs or running away or some other unfortunate tragedy. I told that lie to protect my sister. Because she was pregnant. Because she had Ava. Because she still believed her husband was a good man. But I knew better. And when Ava turned 17, the same age the Davis girl had been, I started seeing signs again. The way Richard touched her shoulder. The long, quiet car rides with no explanation. The way her art got darker. Eyes. Eyes everywhere. I couldn't prove anything yet. But I knew. So I did the only thing left in my arsenal. I feigned madness. Because a mad woman can do what no sane woman dares. She can protect. She can watch. She can maneuver without being questioned because everyone assumes she's no longer dangerous. And that was my greatest weapon. Ava arrived 3 nights later. Lillian dropped her off with tears in her eyes, blaming stress and school, and the tension with your father. I stood on the porch wrapped in a thick shawl, humming a lullaby I hadn't sung in years. Ava hugged me carefully. You okay? I smiled. The fan's off now. So that's something. She tried to smile back, but I saw it, that flicker of fear. Not of me, of the cracks beginning to form in the only world she'd ever known. I didn't blame her. Because when you start to see the truth, it doesn't feel like clarity. It feels like drowning. That night, while Ava unpacked, I went to the garage. I opened an old toolbox, the bottom drawer. Inside was a bundle of tapes. Old VHS cassettes, some labeled, some not. A few had dates. One had a girl's name, Marianne Davis. I didn't watch them. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't for me anymore. It was for Ava, but only when she was ready. And until then, I'd be the mad aunt. The one who talked to shadows. The one no one believed. The one who knew exactly what she was doing. Ava unpacked slowly, like someone expecting to be called back home at any minute. Her things came in 2 suitcases, one packed by her mother and one hastily zipped shut by her. She didn't realize I noticed the difference, but I did. I notice everything now. The blue floral case had sweaters, school books, makeup, the soft pink blanket she's had since she was 8. The black duffel had a journal, a pepper spray keychain, and a burner phone. I said nothing. Because this was the moment I'd been planning for Ava, here in my house, away from Richard. In my world where I could keep watch. Where I could buy time. But she wasn't a child anymore. She was 17. Quiet but stubborn. A girl with too many questions and not enough trust. That first night, I made her tea and watched from the kitchen as she stared at the fireplace like it might offer answers I couldn't. "Do you still hear things?" she asked, her voice light but cautious. "Only when I listen," I replied. She didn't laugh. She just nodded. And that's when I knew she didn't believe I was mad. Not completely. And that was dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my old nursing chair by the front window watching the dark. There was a time when that chair rocked children to sleep long before I lived alone. Now it only rocked the truth. At 3:22 a.m., the motion sensor light flicked on. I rose quietly, not startled, just confirming. A figure stood on the sidewalk. Too still for a jogger, too tall to be a child. It was Richard. He didn't come to the door. He didn't call out. He simply stood there, hands in his coat pockets, looking at the house where his daughter now lived, and where his sister-in-law had lost her mind publicly and dramatically. I stepped into view, turned the porch light on, and stared straight at him. He stepped back, but he didn't flinch. Just a slight tilt of the head, like a man studying something in a zoo. And then he left. I stood in the doorway a moment longer, letting the air chill my bones. Because I knew then I hadn't fooled him. He was watching too. The next morning, I made pancakes with blueberry compote. Ava barely ate. She sat at the table, flipping through her sketchbook, asking about a painting on the wall, a watercolor of a girl standing in a field of cattails. "That was mine," I told her. "Painted it when I was 21. "Is it supposed to be someone specific?" she asked. I hesitated. "She used to live here. Years ago." "Was she family?" "No, just someone who never got a chance to leave." She blinked at me, confused. Then I changed the subject. But the question hung between us like smoke. By the 3rd day, Ava started exploring. It was innocent at first. Shelves, drawers, closets. She asked about old books, flipped through photo albums, even helped me organize the pantry. But then she asked about the room. The one at the end of the hall with the chipped white door and black keyhole. Locked since the day she was born. "What's in there?" I smiled. "Ghosts? Maybe a bad draft." She didn't laugh. I turned serious. "Some things are locked for a reason, Ava." She nodded, but I saw her fingers twitch. Curiosity is inherited. And Ava, like me, never let go of a question once it lodged in her chest. That night, I slid the old journal into a new hiding spot, the air vent behind the laundry machine. Because I was sure of one thing, Ava had found the key. And if she read what I'd written about her father, about the girl who vanished, about the photos no one talks about, it would destroy the illusion she still held. And maybe destroy her. A few days later, I watched her through the narrow gap in the stairwell. She sat cross-legged in the living room, holding the photo I feared most. It had been slipped between the pages of a forgotten cookbook. A black and white shot of a girl on the swings behind the high school. Marianne Davis, 15 years old, gone. "Who is this?" Ava asked when she caught me watching. Her voice didn't waver. Her hands didn't shake. I took the photo, looked at it like I hadn't seen it 1,000 times. She was someone I used to know. What happened to her? She went away. Where? I looked her in the eye. No one knows. But you kept her picture. I keep lots of things, I said. Especially things no one else wants to remember. Ava stared at me a long time. Then she stood and walked away, not angry, just silent, which was worse. That night, I opened the garage cabinet and removed the shoebox of tapes. I stared at the one labeled with a single name, Ricky. Not Richard, not Dad. Ricky. The boy who became the man my sister married. The man Ava trusted. The voice on the tape made my skin crawl. Not because of what he said, but because of how casually he said it. She won't remember anything. They never do after that. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just protecting Ava from the past. I was protecting her from her future. Because whatever he did to Marianne, he had started again. And I wasn't crazy. I was the only one awake. The next morning, Ava was gone. Not far, just the corner store. But the moment I realized she'd left without telling me, something in my chest squeezed hard. I called her burner phone. Voicemail. I called her real one. Off. Then, at 11:03 a.m., a message appeared in my inbox. From an anonymous address. She reached out to me. You won't stop the truth this time. And that was the moment I knew. Someone else was watching. Someone besides Richard. And Ava, my brave, brilliant niece, had just walked into the open. And I had to act fast, before someone else told her the truth. Before she discovered it in a way she'd never recover from. The door to the locked room was slightly ajar. It was the kind of thing only someone like me would notice a half millimeter more open than it had been in 10 years. I didn't panic. Not outwardly. I just stood there in the hallway that morning holding a basket of clean towels and staring at the brass doorknob like it might bite. Ava had found the key. I was sure of it. And if she'd gone inside, there was no undoing what she'd seen. The room had been sealed since the week Marianne Davis vanished. Not because I was hiding evidence, not exactly, but because grief has a scent, and that room had absorbed it. It used to be my art studio. Sunlight still streamed through the half-covered window dust, dancing like ghosts in the air. There were boxes stacked neatly along the wall labeled sketches, medical files, correspondence. And then there was the mirror, old, oval, cracked on the left side just enough to distort a face. I'd left it there for a reason. Sometimes I like to look at myself through the crack, the version of me that was fragmented, wavy, jagged. The one who did what needed to be done. When Ava came home that afternoon, I didn't confront her. Instead, I asked, sleep okay? She shrugged. Yeah. Did you find the tea? Another shrug. I could tell she was testing me, waiting to see if I'd bring up the room. Waiting to know if I was still mad or if she'd finally broken through to something real. I let the silence stretch, then said gently, you left the door open. She didn't blink. Which one? You know which one. Still no reaction. So I smiled. Next time, just ask. A flicker of something crossed her face, guilt or fear or maybe disappointment. Like she'd been hoping I was truly gone enough not to notice. That night, I found my journal was missing. Not the full thing, just a section 30 pages ripped clean from the spine. I sat on the floor in the laundry room, eyes closed, heartbeat in my ears. She knew. Not everything, but enough to suspect. Enough to be in danger. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I stood up, put the journal back, and moved to Plan B. Because I'd always known there might be a day when lies wouldn't be enough. When Ava would chase the truth even if it burned her. At 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of drawers opening, soft footsteps, a quiet creak of a floorboard. I got out of bed barefoot and padded to the top of the stairs. There she was, Ava, kneeling on the living room rug, the shoebox of tapes in front of her. The one with Ricky's name on the label in thick black marker. She hadn't played them yet. I watched from the shadows as she held one in her hand, staring at it like it might explode. Then gently she put it back. She stood, looked toward the stairs, and whispered without knowing I was there. Why didn't you tell me? The next morning, I found the journal pages tucked into her sketchbook, folded neatly, hidden under a drawing of the house on fire. I didn't confront her. Instead, I placed a new note in her backpack. It said, Some stories only make sense when you already know the ending. Wait before you press play. No signature. Just that. Because the truth doesn't work like a light switch. It's not instant. It's slow. Like frost spreading across a window. And I knew Ava. If I pushed too hard, she'd run and maybe right into the arms of the man who built his life on pretending to be her father. Later that evening, Ava came to me in the garden. She was holding the drawing from her sketchbook, the one of the house on fire. She handed it to me. You drew this before, she said. When I was little. It hung in the hallway. I nodded. I did. Why did you take it down? Because I wasn't ready to explain what it meant. And now, I took a deep breath. It means memory can't be erased, just repainted. She looked down at her hands, then said something I wasn't prepared for. I think he's been following me. I froze. Who? She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. After school, she whispered. I thought it was just paranoia, but now I'm not sure. My stomach dropped. She looked up at me. I don't think you're crazy, Aunt Maggie. I think you're protecting me from something. And in that moment, I saw her fully. Not a child, not a niece, but someone standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if she'd jump or if she'd be pushed. And I realized I couldn't let her find out the full truth alone. Not anymore. That night, I pulled the tape labeled Ricky from the box. I set up the old cassette player on the table. Ava sat across from me, arms folded, jaw clenched. You sure you want this? I asked. No. She pressed play anyway. The room filled with static. Then the slow murmur of a voice. Calm. Casual. A man talking like the world wasn't watching. And Ava listened. Every word. Her face drained of color. Her lips parted slightly. She didn't blink for nearly a minute. Then the tape clicked off. She said nothing. Just got up, went to her room, and closed the door behind her. I didn't follow. Because the worst truths don't need explanation. They just need time to settle. But I knew something had shifted. The door was open now. Not the one at the end of the hall, but the one inside her. And whatever came next would not be quiet. It was the smell that stayed with me. That strange metallic smell of bleach and something darker, something sour and final. Years later, I still wake up with it in my nose like the past has been seeping out through the walls while I sleep. The day I found them, it wasn't supposed to be anything. Just a Sunday. Just another slow afternoon in a quiet town where nothing ever happens until it does. Marianne had missed her shift at the diner that morning. I'd gone in to cover for her thinking she'd overslept or caught a stomach bug. I called. No answer. By 2 hours, I started walking. The shed behind the library wasn't used anymore. Not officially. It had been a storage place back when they still held community carnivals and summer film nights. No one ever locked it. But the door was shut. The moment I pushed it open, the stench hit me, bleach, sweat, something damp. And inside I found Marianne. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, eyes wide open like a doll left behind in a rush. Her shirt was torn. One sandal missing. She was shaking. And he was there. Richard. Or Ricky, as we knew him back then. He was zipping up his pants, facing away from her, breathing hard. He didn't see me at first. Not until I whispered his name. He turned. And I swear to God, he smiled at me. Just for a second. Then he stepped forward and said calmly, She's not feeling well. Must have taken something. Marianne didn't speak. She just stared at me. I took a step forward. He blocked me. You don't understand, Maggie. I said nothing. Because I did understand. And that's what scared me the most. I didn't tell anyone. Not right away. I wish I could say I ran to the police or my parents or anyone. But I didn't. Because that same night, Lillian came to me crying, shaking, telling me she was pregnant. That she and Ricky were engaged. That he had proposed that afternoon. I sat there nodding like I was listening. But my brain was still back in that shed with the bleach and the silence and the way Marianne looked at me like she had died and no one had told her. I knew if I spoke, I would unravel everything. Lillian's joy. My family's future. Ava's life before it even began. So I said nothing. And Marianne disappeared the next day. They said she ran away. Took money from the register and skipped town. There was a bus ticket purchased in her name. A duffel bag found at the Greyhound station. No body. No evidence. Just a story wrapped in convenience. But I knew better. And Ricky knew I knew. So he smiled at me for years, every holiday, every birthday, every barbecue. That same half smile like he was daring me to speak. I almost did. Once. The week after Ava was born, I held her in my arms and whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what." And I felt something shift inside me. A vow, a fracture, something permanent. Years passed. I tried to believe that what I saw, what I knew, had been twisted by fear. That maybe I misunderstood. That maybe Marianne really did run. But then when Ava turned 13, she started drawing eyes. Hundreds of them. Eyes in the margins of her homework. On napkins. On her mirror with lipstick. I asked her why. She shrugged and said, "Because they watch me." I told Lillian. She brushed it off. I told Ricky. And he smiled. That was the moment I knew it was starting again. That he hadn't stopped. That maybe he never had. I started keeping notes. Strange conversations. Places he took Ava alone. The times she came home looking off. Not bruised. Not broken. Just quieter. Duller. Like someone had taken an eraser to her spirit. I begged Lillian to notice. But Lillian was already fading sick, then sicker, then gone. When she died, I promised her something in that hospital room, whispering it into her hand like a prayer. I'll keep her safe, even if it kills me. And when Ricky got full custody, I knew I had to become something unrecognizable. So I did. The fall before Ava turned 17, I started planting seeds, leaving the stove on, wandering into stores and forgetting why I was there, talking to no one in public parks. I let the rumors grow that something was off about me, until the dinner, until the blood, until the scream, until I snapped. Or so they thought. Back in the present, I sat in my kitchen staring at Ava's drawing again, the house on fire. And I realized something I hadn't before. The figure standing outside the burning house was her, watching it burn, not running, not saving anything, just watching. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was protecting her, or if she already knew more than I did. I went to her room. She was sketching again, this time a girl sitting in a field. I recognized her face. Marianne. "Where'd you see her?" I asked softly. Ava looked up. In the mirror. The old one. She was crying. I sat down slowly. "She's been crying for a long time. Why didn't you save her?" I tried. I failed. Ava held my gaze. "Don't fail me." It wasn't a question. It was a command. And I nodded because I knew this was no longer about pretending. The time for madness was over. The time for truth had finally come. It began with an innocent question. Ava was sitting on the porch swing, knees pulled up, sketchbook balanced on her thighs, hair still damp from her shower. The air smelled like cut grass and old rain. She was drawing a face again, a soft one this time, unfamiliar, unfinished. "Hey," she said without looking up. "What did Mom mean when she wrote, 'Don't let her forget who she is'?" I froze. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening second by second. "Where did you read that?" She shrugged. "In one of her old notebooks. It was between recipes and lists of medicine. Just a line scribbled in the margin." I smiled carefully. She meant, "Don't lose yourself to fear. That's all." But Ava turned toward me, eyes sharp. That's not how it read. It felt more like a warning. My hands curled around the porch railing. She was digging again, deeper this time. And she didn't know what kind of monster lived at the bottom. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled Lillian's old notebooks from the top closet shelf. Dozens of them lined up like gravestones, logs from when she was caring for our father, later notes from her nursing shifts, then more recent ones that blurred into grief and anxiety. I found the page. The handwriting had shifted, more frantic than usual, letters leaning left. "Don't let her forget who she is. Not like they made me." That word alone made my heart knock against my ribs. I remembered the weeks before Lillian died, the way she spoke in whispers, flinched when Ricky entered the room. She never said it aloud, not directly, but her fear was thick. And now I wondered if she'd wanted to confess something more. Something about Ava, something even I hadn't seen. The next morning, Ava brought home a folder from school. She said she was working on a project for English, a personal family narrative. She asked if she could record some conversations with me. Just stuff about growing up. About you and Mom. Maybe even Ricky. My body stiffened. Why him? She shrugged. He's part of the story. I shook my head slowly. Stories aren't always meant to be told. But this one is mine. That stopped me cold. Because she wasn't wrong. And the weight of what I'd been shielding her from suddenly felt like a theft. Later, I caught her standing in the hallway staring at the mirror. The one from the sealed room now hanging crookedly on the wall outside the bathroom. Why is it cracked? She asked. It's been that way for years. It's weird. I look like someone else when I stand in front of it. Like, not just distorted, but different. She turned to me. Did something happen to me when I was younger? My mouth went dry. No, I said too quickly. Her eyes narrowed. You're lying. I stepped forward. Ava, don't chase shadows. I'm not chasing anything. I'm trying to see. Then she walked past me back into her room and shut the door. And I leaned against the wall, breath shallow, wondering if the lie had just cracked along the same seam as that mirror. At midnight, the lights flickered. Just once. And then again. I rose from bed, pulled on a robe, and went to check the fuse box. Everything was fine. But when I returned to the hallway, the mirror was gone. Not missing. Smashed. Shards across the hardwood as if it had exploded from the inside out. Ava's door was ajar. She was gone. I found her sitting in the locked room, the one she had no permission to enter, yet clearly had again. She sat on the floor, her sketchbook in her lap, surrounded by my boxes. In her hands was a photograph, one I hadn't seen in years. It was from Marianne's birthday party 3 weeks before she vanished. The photo had 5 people: Marianne, myself, another friend Lillian, and Ricky. His hand was on Marianne's shoulder. Too tight, too familiar. Ava held it like it was proof in a courtroom. You knew. It wasn't a question. I suspected. No, she said, voice trembling. You knew. And you let him raise me. I knelt beside her. I had no choice. You had every choice. Her words sliced through me. Then she held up the photograph, pointing to the back. A name scribbled there in my own handwriting, Ava second from left. Only the girl labeled wasn't Ava. It was Marianne. And suddenly everything fell silent, even in my own head. I don't understand, I said slowly. Ava's hands were shaking. This looks like me, she whispered. Exactly like me. People resemble each other sometimes. No, she said. This is me. This is my hair, my chin, the freckle on my right cheek. I took the photo again, inspecting it, and my world tilted. Because she was right. It was her. But it wasn't. The girl in the photo was 15 when she disappeared. Ava was born 2 years later. I looked at her, heart pounding. And for the first time, I realized there might be a truth even I didn't know. That night I dug deeper, into my own memories. The hospital records, Ava's birth certificate, Lillian's medical logs. There were inconsistencies, dates that didn't align, gaps in appointments, a missing entry from the week Lillian had gone on bed rest. Ava had always been a quiet baby, rarely cried, never clung. And Lillian had always held her a little too tightly, called her my second chance. Now the phrase haunted me. Was Ava adopted, switched? Was she Marianne's child? Or worse, was she Marianne herself? A twin A cover-up? Had Lillian faked something? Had Ricky? The questions piled like stones on my chest. And I realized I had only days, maybe hours, before Ava uncovered everything, and possibly broke forever. I started following her. Not in the obvious way, not like Ricky used to. I didn't hover or show up unannounced. I was careful, silent, a shadow, because I no longer trusted what I knew. And Ava was moving through the world like someone with a destination she wouldn't name. She left earlier each morning, said it was school, but her uniform remained untouched. Her sketchbook grew thicker, her phone buzzed more. And the worst part, she'd stopped talking to me altogether. Even the small talk was gone. No more breakfast questions, no more curious glances at the family photos. Just silence. I knew that silence. It was the same kind I'd wrapped around myself after the shed. It meant she was holding something so big, so raw, it felt safer to keep it locked inside. So I followed her. Tuesday, 4th, 11 p.m. She exited the town library through the back alley, not the main doors. Wednesday, 9:08 a.m. She took the bus to the next town over, not unusual unless you knew her schedule. Thursday, 3rd, 27 p.m. She stood outside the Whitmore apartments for 15 minutes just staring at Unit 3B. By Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. I followed her into the building. She didn't see me. She went straight up to 3B and knocked 3 times short long, like it was a code. A man answered the door. Mid-40s, balding, narrow eyes, familiar. She stepped inside. He closed the door, and every nerve in my body screamed. I waited 32 minutes. Then I knocked. The man opened the door, surprised. His eyes narrowed as he studied me. "You're Ava's aunt," he said. "And you are?" He stepped aside slightly, but not far enough to let me in. "My name's Warren. I run the digital archive project at the library. Ava's been helping me collect oral histories and old news footage for her school research." His voice was calm, too calm. I narrowed my eyes. "She's 17. He shrugged, and very smart. "I didn't give her permission. She didn't need yours." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Where is she?" "Gone. Left 10 minutes ago through the back." He smiled. "She's not a child, you know. Don't talk to me like you know her." He leaned against the doorframe. "You've spent so long pretending to be crazy, maybe you forgot what actual danger looks like." I stepped forward. "And you think you're safe?" "I think he said you should start asking better questions." And then he shut the door. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I watched the same tape on repeat, the one with Ricky's voice. I listened to every syllable, every breath, searching for something I hadn't heard before. But all I found was confirmation. He was grooming girls, maybe worse. And now Ava was inside the puzzle, touching every piece, moving toward a picture she might never be able to unsee. I wanted to warn her. I wanted to scream. But I knew from experience, the louder you yell, the faster they run. So I returned to the basics. Surveillance, paper trails, whispers. The next morning, I went to the library and pulled the local obituaries from 15 years ago. Not for Marianne, she was never listed, but for another girl, Laura Finch. Died in a drowning accident at age 17. Same year, same month. I didn't remember her, but there was a photo, and my knees buckled, because she looked exactly like Marianne, not similar, identical. Twins, no record of that. I called the county hospital, asked about birth records from 1989, gave Marianne's name. The clerk said there were no twin entries, no duplicate files. But when I asked about Laura, he hesitated. "Ma'am, that file's sealed." "Why?" "Court-ordered confidentiality." "By whom?" Click. The line went dead. I returned home to find Ava waiting for me. She stood at the foot of the stairs holding something in her hands. It was a necklace, a locket. She opened it. Inside were 2 photos, one of Lillian, one of me. "I found it in Ricky's desk," she said. "I didn't know he still kept that." She looked up. "It wasn't just his desk." "What do you mean?" She handed me a folded sheet of paper. It was a letter, written in Lillian's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I tried to stop him, but he told me the baby would be safe if I stayed quiet. He said it was the only way to protect you." The ink was smudged at the bottom. Ava whispered, "Am I her daughter?" My voice caught. "I don't know. Do you suspect?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." She stepped back. "So all of this, your madness, the locked doors, the photos, it wasn't just about him hurting me. It was about him hiding me." My breath shook. Maybe both. She sat down hard on the steps, and for the first time she cried. Not small tears, not quiet ones. Big shaking sobs that echoed through the house like thunder. Ugh. When she finally looked at me again, her voice was steady. "What happens now?" I sat beside her. "We find the rest of the truth. And then we burn it down." The knock came at dusk. 3 short, impatient raps against the wood. Not the cautious kind, not the hesitant rhythm of a neighbor or friend. This knock had weight. It had ownership. I was in the kitchen. Ava was upstairs. I froze mid-stir, the smell of garlic and onions hanging in the air like a trap. I already knew who it was. No one else knocked like that. No one else dared. I dried my hands, unhooked the latch, and opened the door just enough to see him. Richard, or Ricky, as I could never stop calling him in my mind. Leaner than before, lines deeper. A face so familiar it made my throat tighten with a memory I never wanted. "Ava home?" he asked, casual, like we hadn't spent years dancing around a silence so loud it nearly shattered us both. "She's resting. I'll wait." He stepped forward and I blocked the doorway with my body. "You weren't invited." He smiled, that same sick patient smile he wore the day I caught him in the shed. "You look better, Maggie. Lucid. I suppose your little show's over now, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. Then he leaned closer, lowered his voice. "You had no right to take her from me." "I didn't take her," I said. "She walked." "Because you poisoned her?" I took a slow, deliberate breath. "She's not yours, Ricky. You've known that for years." Something flickered behind his eyes, just for a second. Then his smile returned. "Let her come with me. She needs stability. This," he gestured toward the house, "is a mausoleum. She's not going anywhere." His tone changed. "You don't want to go to court over this. Try me." He leaned back on his heels, studied me. Then calmly he said, "You sure you want her to find out what really happened to Marianne?" My blood turned to ice. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to twist the knife. And I saw the glint in his eyes. He hadn't just come for Ava. He'd come to reclaim control. That night, I checked every lock twice. Ava didn't ask about the visitor. But she must have seen the car from her window. She must have heard his voice. She stayed silent until I placed a tape recorder on the table. "Tomorrow," I said, "you and I are going to record everything. From the beginning. Even Marianne. Yes, even what he did." I looked her straight in the eye. "Especially that." She nodded. But her face was pale. Because she too had changed since the door opened. She was no longer just a niece. She was becoming a witness. And witnesses carry danger. The next morning, we sat at the dining room table. 2 mugs of tea, 1 microphone. I pressed record. She began. Her voice was steady at first, recalling birthdays, odd gifts, moments she felt watched. Then her tone shifted, became unsure, fogged with memory. "I think he started taking me to his office when I was 6. Always late. Always said it was our secret." She paused. "I don't remember what happened there. Just colors. The hum of a refrigerator. Cold. Then silence." I reached for her hand. "Do you want to stop?" "No," she said. "I want to remember." The knock came again. Not at the front door this time. At the back. Ava jumped. I rose, heart pounding, and crossed the kitchen to the back entrance. I pulled the curtain back slightly. It wasn't Richard. It was Warren. The man from the apartment, holding something in his hands. I opened the door just enough to speak. "I told you to stay away." He held up a manila envelope. "You're going to want this." "What is it?" "Records. Medical. Legal. Hidden for years." "From where?" "Someone inside the system. Someone who owed me a favor." He pushed the envelope into my hand. "And Maggie." "What?" "You're not crazy, but you are in over your head." Then he walked away. I locked the door, turned to Ava. We opened the envelope together. Inside were 2 birth certificates, both dated 1990. One was Marianne Davis, born May 12th. The other, Ava Marie Finch, born May 12th, same hospital, 20 minutes apart. Same mother, same attending physician, same room number, but different surnames. And then we saw it. A line scrawled in blue pen at the bottom of Marianne's certificate: "Infant, transferred to private ward for observation. No public record entry per family request." Ava whispered Finch. "Like Laura Finch." I nodded. And it hit me like a tidal wave. Ava wasn't just connected to Marianne. She was the daughter of Marianne. And Finch wasn't a surname of adoption, it was the name given to hide her. It all made sense now. Lillian must have discovered the pregnancy after the assault. Maybe she tried to protect Marianne but was manipulated. Maybe she agreed to raise Ava as her own, believing it was the only way to keep her safe from Ricky and the town's judgment. But Ricky had stayed close. Too close. And maybe he never believed Ava wasn't his. Which explained his obsession, his control, his threats. He thought she was his. I looked at Ava. Her face had gone blank, her fingers trembling over the documents. "I don't know who I am," she said quietly. "You're Ava. You're mine." "No," she said, pulling away. "I'm someone's secret. A child born of silence." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm Marianne's." "Yes. Is she alive?" "I don't know. And if she's not, then I'm just a replacement." I pulled her close, held her tight as she shook against me. "You're not a replacement," I whispered. "You're the reason I pretended to be mad, the reason I stayed silent. I did it to protect you, not because I saw you as someone else's echo, but because you were the only voice left that hadn't been stolen." Her sobs came harder, but she held me back, and that was something. That night, I dug out the last tape, labeled M, Last Call. It was dated 2 weeks before Marianne disappeared. On it, her voice crackled through the static. Soft. Terrified. "I don't want to go home, Maggie. I think he's watching me. I think he knows." I paused it, looked at Ava. "Tomorrow I said we go public." Ava looked at me with a face I hadn't seen before. Not a girl, not even a niece, but a survivor. And in her silence I saw Marianne's eyes. And I knew the reckoning was coming. We uploaded the tape at dawn. No edits. No voice filters. Just a grainy recording of Marianne Davis Ava's real mother whispering into a recorder like it was the only witness she had left. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. Or I'm running. Either way. He won't let me live normal. He says I owe him. But I didn't choose any of this." And then softly, "If something happens to me, Maggie, tell the truth. Don't let my baby grow up inside a lie." Ava and I sat in silence after it ended. The cursor blinked over the YouTube upload button, public or private. One click. That's all it would take to rip the mask off everything. "You're sure?" I asked her. She didn't hesitate. "Post it." I did. And we waited. The views ticked up faster than I expected. At first it was strangers, a few comments. Then locals began sharing it, people who remembered Marianne, people who had always questioned her disappearance. Within 4 hours, someone had uploaded it to a Facebook group for unsolved cold cases in our town. By noon, it had over 13,000 views. By 2, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I picked up anyway. "Maggie Elkins." "Yes." "This is Deputy Carla Voss. Mind if I come by for a few questions? About the audio and the other things being circulated with your name attached." Her voice wasn't threatening, but it wasn't friendly either. "I'll be here," I said. "Don't go anywhere." She hung up. I turned to Ava. "They'll want to know how we got the tape. I'll tell them. They might not believe us." "I don't care," she said, jaw clenched. "I'm done hiding." She stood up, walked to the window, and said something I didn't expect. "He came to my school last week." I sat bolt upright. "What?" He didn't say anything, just stood across the street, watching. But I knew it was him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted proof before I said it out loud." She turned back to me. "I took a photo." She handed me her phone, and there he was, Ricky, standing by the oak tree outside the school fence, arms crossed, face neutral, like he belonged there. But he didn't. And now, he was cornered. Deputy Voss arrived just after 4:00 p.m. She was young, maybe 35, but walked with the authority of someone twice her age. Crisp uniform, no makeup. Pen clipped to her collar. She sat at the dining table with us, pulled out a notepad, and started writing. "You're aware that what you've posted constitutes a public accusation?" "Yes," I said. "Do you have any other evidence beyond the tape?" I slid the manila envelope across the table. Medical records, birth certificates, Lillian's handwritten confession. She sifted through them slowly, carefully. Her expression didn't change. "Do you know where Ricky is now?" "No," Ava said too quickly. I met Voss's eyes, but he knows where we are. The deputy looked at us both, then said something that chilled me. You're not the only ones who've come forward since this morning. I blinked. What do you mean? We've had 2 other women both from town share stories. Similar patterns. Nothing provable. Not then. But now. She nodded toward the tape recorder. You just opened the floodgates. After she left, Ava and I sat in the backyard under the stars. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Do you think I'm like him? No, but we share blood. Or might. You share Marianne's blood, I said. And she was more than what happened to her. Ava looked down at her hands. I don't remember anything before I was 6. That's okay. But what if something's buried in there? Something dark. I leaned in close. Darkness doesn't pass down like a family recipe. It's not inheritance. It's choice. And you've already made yours. She didn't answer, but her fingers slowly reached for mine. The next morning, we woke to banging on the front door. Not knocking. Banging. I rushed downstairs, heart racing. It was Warren. Breathless, soaked with sweat, panic written across his face. You have to come with me, now. Why? What happened? He shoved his phone into my hands. A headline. Man found dead in motel off Route 9, suspected overdose, foul play not ruled out. Below it, a grainy photo. Ricky, lying face down in a motel bed. Pale, still, dead. Ava came down the stairs just in time to see it. She said nothing, just stared. And I knew what she was thinking. Now what? Because even though the threat was gone, the story wasn't over, not even close. Later that afternoon, we went to the motel. We weren't allowed in the room, it was still taped off, but Warren had contacts. He'd gotten a look at the scene. He had a folder with him, he told me. It had your name. Ava's, Marianne's, newspaper clippings, a photo of you from 2 weeks ago, and one thing that stood out. What? A receipt. For what? He hesitated. A DNA test. My stomach dropped. Warren handed me a photocopy. Ava's name was on it, and next to it, under potential paternal match, it read, Result negative. Ricky wasn't her father. Not biologically. But the fact that he'd tested it recently meant something far worse. He suspected, or knew, and maybe he was trying to silence it once and for all. That night, I found Ava in the hallway. She was staring at the mirror again, a new one, whole this time, not cracked. She said softly, I feel like I've been living someone else's life. You've been living the life that was given to you, but it wasn't real. It was real because you lived it. Because you survived it. Then she looked at me with those steady eyes and asked, Do you think Marianne is still alive? And for the first time since this all began, I didn't say no. I said, Let's find out. We started with the shelters. There weren't many not in our county, but Marianne had always been drawn to places that disappeared into the cracks. Quiet spaces, fringe homes, second chances wrapped in borrowed names. We called them one by one. No one had heard of her, or if they had, they weren't talking. Until one receptionist at a women's shelter 2 towns away paused mid-sentence when I said the name Marianne Davis. What did you say her name was? I repeated it, my voice tight. There was silence on the other end. Then, we don't discuss our residents. Please, I said, grasping. It's been 17 years. I think she might be my sister. I think she might be my niece's mother. A sigh. Then another silence. And finally, Come in, quietly. Ask for Darlene. We drove in silence. Ava stared out the window, her sketchbook untouched in her lap. She might not remember me, she said suddenly. She might not remember anything. And what if it's not her? What if we're wrong? Then we keep looking. Ava turned toward me, voice barely above a whisper. And if it is her? I didn't answer, because I didn't know what came after that. Not for Ava. Not for me. The shelter was small, a 2-story converted house behind a church. Faded shutters, a welcome sign that felt out of place in its cheer. Inside, it smelled like chamomile and hand sanitizer. A woman behind the desk stood when we entered. Darlene, I asked. She nodded. You're Maggie? Yes. She looked at Ava, then back at me. This way. She led us down a narrow hall into a room with mismatched chairs and a window that barely opened. Then she shut the door behind us and folded her arms. "She goes by Rose here," she said. My breath caught. Rose. Came in about 9 years ago. Shaky paranoid. Said she used to be someone else but didn't want to talk about it. We didn't push. That's the rule here. And now, she's quiet. Keeps to herself. Teaches one of the art therapy classes. Doesn't use her real name. Never had ID. We always wondered. I felt my heart beating in my throat. "Can we see her?" Darlene hesitated. "I'll ask. No promises." She left the room. Ava clutched my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt her shaking. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then the door opened, and in walked a woman with soft graying hair tied in a low knot, a long cardigan, paint stains on her fingers. She looked at me first, then at Ava, and her knees buckled. I lunged forward, caught her just before she hit the floor. "Marianne," I whispered. She blinked. "Maggie." Her voice was dry, fragile, like a name said after a long illness. I helped her into the chair. She looked at Ava again, and then the smallest whisper, "You look just like her." Ava stepped forward. "I think I am her." The silence stretched long, thick. A clock ticked in the corner. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. But in that room, the past arrived like a windstorm. Marianne or Rose stared at Ava with something beyond recognition. Not quite shock, not quite grief. Then she whispered, "Your eyes. You have her sadness." Ava sat down, slowly. "My name is Ava. I was raised by Lillian. Maggie protected me. But I've always felt hollow, like something was missing." Marianne looked away. "I tried to protect you too. You left me." "No," Marianne said, tears brimming. "They took you." The words fell like stones. "I don't remember much," Marianne said. "It's like my mind was a mirror someone smashed and glued back together wrong. But I remember the pain, the silence, the drugs maybe. Something to keep me quiet." She looked up. "And then I woke up one day and I wasn't pregnant anymore. My stomach turned." "You never held her." "I never even heard her cry." She looked at Ava again. I thought, maybe I imagined the whole thing. That they'd taken the baby and told everyone I made it up. I started seeing things. I couldn't sleep. I ran. She looked down at her hands, and I stayed gone, because it was safer. Ava sat very still. Then she asked, "Do you want to know me?" Marianne nodded slowly. "Yes." "Do you want to remember?" Another nod. "Then I need you to promise something." Marianne looked up. "Anything." Ava's voice trembled. "Promise me we won't lie anymore. That we'll tell everything. Even the ugly parts." Marianne reached across the table and took her hand. "I promise." We stayed at the shelter until dusk. Marianne couldn't leave yet, not without approval, not without preparation, but Darlene said she could have visitors, and Marianne agreed to meet again the next day. As we walked to the car, Ava turned to me. "Do you think she can heal?" "Yes, even after everything." I looked at her. "You did." Back home, we sat in the living room, exhausted. Then Ava reached for her sketchbook. She turned to a blank page and began to draw. A woman. Older, wiser, sad eyes, hands cupped around a sunflower. "Her," she said softly. "That's how I'll remember her. Not the girl who ran, but the woman who stayed lost so I could be found." I didn't speak, because that image was already more beautiful, more powerful than anything I could say. Later that night, Ava found me in the kitchen. "There's something I haven't told you." I looked up. "What is it?" She slid a paper across the table. A letter, handwritten, dated the day after Ricky's death. I found it in his folder. I opened it. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Ava. "You were never supposed to be mine, but I kept you close. I thought I could fix what was broken by owning what came after. But you were never a fix. You were the reminder. And that's why I hated you and loved you. I'm sorry." The signature was just an R. Ava's voice was quiet. I think he knew I'd come looking. And I realized something in that moment. This story wasn't just about secrets. It was about survivors who became seekers. And seekers who became something stronger than truth. They became whole. The local reporter's name was Gina Malloy. Young, soft-spoken, with eyes that missed nothing and a voice built for coaxing truth out of trauma. She reached out 2 days after we met Marianne. Her email was brief. I saw the video. If you're ready to speak, I'll make sure your story is told with dignity. Normally, I wouldn't have answered. But Ava, she wanted to be heard. Not just by strangers online, by her town, her school. The people who watched her grow up in silence while suspecting something was always off. So I wrote back, we're ready. The interview was held in a community center auditorium, the kind used for PTA meetings and disaster prep drills. There were folding chairs, a film crew from the local PBS affiliate, and a single spotlight overhead. Gina greeted us with a firm handshake and a quiet promise. This is your space. You speak. I listen. Ava was dressed in navy. Simple. Still. But her hand gripped mine tightly before the cameras rolled. I leaned in and whispered, you don't owe anyone perfection. You only owe them truth. She nodded. And the light turned on. Gina began. Today we're speaking with Maggie Elkins and her niece Ava, the subjects of a recent viral audio file that many believe is linked to the 2008 disappearance of a local teen, Marianne Davis. She turned to Ava. Ava, let's start with what made you speak out now. Ava paused. Her voice shook slightly at first. I guess I just got tired of being confused, of feeling like my life was built on missing pieces. I didn't know who I was or where I came from, but I knew something was wrong. She looked over at me. And Maggie, she protected me even when I didn't understand what she was protecting me from. I squeezed her hand. Gina nodded, then turned to me. Maggie, for years you were seen as erratic, even unstable. What made you finally step into the light? I answered carefully. I faked madness because I had to. Because if I acted sane, Ricky would have buried the truth. And no one would have listened. There was a sharp breath from someone behind the camera. I continued. He wasn't just dangerous. He was believable, charismatic, respected. He made people think I was crazy so they'd stop asking about Marianne. So I let them believe it. Because as long as they watched me, they weren't watching Ava. Gina's brow furrowed. You sacrificed your reputation. I'd do it again. We spoke for nearly an hour. About Marianne. About the shelter. About the folder Ricky left behind. Gina's questions were direct, but never cruel. She gave Ava space to pause when she needed, and gave me the grace to fall silent when my voice cracked. Then she asked the question I'd feared most. Maggie, do you believe Marianne is ready to come forward herself? Ava and I exchanged glances. I said not yet. Ava added, but she's watching. Gina smiled. Then maybe this is her first step. The interview aired the following week. Viewers flooded the station's website. Emails poured in, some with stories, some with rage, others with relief. A retired nurse wrote that she remembered Marianne's face from a hospital stay, but had been told she was just a runaway. A teacher said she'd suspected Ricky of favoritism, but was silenced by administration. One woman from 2 counties over sent a photo, an old group therapy picture with Marianne standing at the back. Name tag turned inward. Marianne had always been here, hiding in plain sight. But the reaction wasn't all support. 2 days after the interview, a brick shattered our living room window. It landed on the carpet wrapped in brown paper scrawled with 3 words. Let the dead lie. I grabbed Ava and called the police. Deputy Voss arrived again, this time with 2 officers. She examined the brick, took photos, asked if we'd made new enemies. No, I said, only old ones. She looked at Ava, then back at me. We'll increase patrols, but Maggie, things are shifting. Fast. I nodded. I know. Later that night, I sat with Marianne on the shelter's back porch. She watched the trees sway, then asked, Do you think it's too late for me? I shook my head. Not if you're breathing. She chuckled bitter. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said. But it's possible. She turned to me. Do you hate me? No, I said. I missed you. She reached for my hand, gripped it. I think I want to try again. I want to be in Ava's life. If she'll let me. She will. Then Marianne said something I'd never expected. I kept one thing, something he didn't know I had. What is it? She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a thumb drive. I recorded a conversation. The night before I ran. He was drunk. Thought I was asleep. I stared at it. If what's on here is what I think it is, this could change everything. I know. The next morning, I listened to it, and I heard Ricky's voice slurred but unmistakable. She's not just some girl, you know. She belongs to me. I made her. She'll understand one day. They always do. Then a pause. Then a whisper. Maggie's starting to ask too many questions. Maybe I should show her what happens when sisters stop being loyal. My hand flew to my mouth. He'd planned to hurt me. Maybe worse. And Marianne. She'd known. She'd tried to warn me in the only way she could. By vanishing. That day we gave the drive to Deputy Voss. She sat stone-faced as it played. When it ended, she stood up and said, I'm reopening the case. Ava exhaled sharply beside me. You believe us? I always believed you, Voss said. I just didn't have a rope to pull the truth up with. Now I do. She turned to Ava. We're going to find the rest of them. Who? The people who helped him. The ones who signed documents. Silenced nurses. Changed files. I felt my breath catch. This wasn't just about Ricky anymore. It was about the network. The quiet complicity. And the systems that kept girls like Marianne, like Ava, in the dark. That night, Ava stood in front of the mirror again. Only this time she smiled. I used to wonder if I was broken, she said. If whatever happened to me made me some kind of glitch. I walked up behind her. And now, she turned toward me. I think I'm just inherited strength. I smiled. She was right. We sat on the porch under the stars. Marianne would be visiting in a week. The shelter was helping her transition into housing. She asked to be slow, deliberate. She wanted her re-entry to be earned. Ava respected that. So did I. But I also knew our story was no longer a confession. It was a reconstruction. A beginning built from broken things. And it wasn't over yet. The protest signs went up overnight. Not outside City Hall. Not the courthouse. Outside our house. I woke to shouting and honking, a group of maybe a dozen people on the sidewalk, waving crude posters smearing the dead. Defamation. Maggie, the madwoman. Lies let sleeping sins lie. Ava stood by the window pale-faced. They're here because of us, she whispered. No, I said, reaching for her shoulder. They're here because of him. They just don't know it yet. The town had been split since the interview. Half applauded our courage, old classmates, single mothers, even teachers who said they'd seen the signs years ago. But the other half, they whispered poison. That we were attention seekers. That Marianne had vanished because she was unstable, promiscuous, dramatic. She's dragging good men down with her ghost, one post read. And there it was. The fear. The truth they couldn't face. That good men could be predators. That the pillars of their peaceful town could be rotten at the base. So it was easier to vilify us. To call me mad. To call Ava tainted. It got worse after the drive was released. The recording from Marianne, the one where Ricky threatened to handle me. It was damning. Ugly. But instead of triggering sympathy, it triggered rage. Not from the law, they reopened the case, just like Voss said. But from the town's old guard. The people who saw Marianne's pain as shameful, disruptive. They wanted us quiet, so they tried to scare us into silence. Deputy Voss increased patrols, but her voice was tense when she stopped by. You've stirred a hornet's nest, Maggie. I didn't stir it, I said. I shined a light on it. She gave a small nod. Well, that light's hot, and some of the ones it's burning, they've been hiding a long time. I glanced at Ava. She was in the kitchen sketching again her way of coping. I can take the heat, I said. Voss hesitated. What? There's something else, she said. A document came across my desk this morning. Sealed record from 2008. Court-ordered psychiatric hold. For who? Marianne. My stomach dropped. That's not possible. She was never committed. Just vanished. Well, this says she was held for 72 hours at Westbrook Mental Health. I shook my head. That's not in any of the hospital files. It was buried, paid for in cash, and the person who signed the request. She handed me the form. It was a copy blurred and yellowing, but the signature was clear. Lillian Davis, my sister, Ava's adoptive mother, Marianne's protector. The woman who had supposedly taken in her sister's baby to save her had also signed the paper that locked Marianne away. When I told Ava, she stared at the paper for a long time, then said she saved me. She did, I said, in her way. But she also hurt her own sister. Yes. Ava looked at me, eyes glassy. Was there anyone in my life who didn't lie? I couldn't answer, because even I had lied. Every day I feigned madness. Every time I stayed silent when she asked about the past. And now, I had to tell her everything. That night, we sat in the living room. Rain tapped the windows like knuckles. I need to tell you something, I began. Ava didn't look up from her sketchbook. It's about the night Marianne disappeared. She paused mid-stroke. I was there. A beat. I was with her when she ran. She called me in the middle of the night, said she was scared. Said Ricky had tried to corner her again. Ava's eyes lifted. You never told me that. I didn't want you to see me differently. I didn't want you to think I'd failed her. Did you? I swallowed hard. I drove her to the bus station. I gave her money. A burner phone. I told her I'd take care of things. And then I let her go. Ava's voice was cold. You let her go. She begged me not to tell anyone, not even Lillian. So you just watched her vanish. I thought I was protecting her. You were protecting yourself. That hit deeper than I expected, because it was true. The silence stretched. Then Ava stood, walked to the front door, grabbed her coat. Where are you going? To Marianne. I'll drive you. No. She turned and her face looked older than it had the day before. I need to hear the truth from her now. And then she was gone. She came back 3 hours later, drenched from the rain. She didn't speak as she passed me in the hallway, but I saw something in her eyes. Not anger, not pain, resolve. She dropped her coat on the chair, then said, she told me everything, about Lillian, about the pregnancy, about the silence, and you. I waited. She said you were the only one who ever believed her, the only one who stayed when she screamed at you to go. I was. She forgives you. I choked. And you. A long pause. Then, I'm still deciding. The next morning, a letter arrived. No stamp, no envelope, just folded paper slid under our door. Inside, a single sentence handwritten. You'll never testify if you're dead. Ava read it over my shoulder. We need to go. No, I said. We need to stay. Maggie. They're scared. They should be. Because for the first time in 17 years, we're not afraid of them. She looked at me, and she nodded. Slow, quiet. The nod of a girl who knew the war had already begun and who wasn't planning to lose. Court doesn't feel like justice. It feels like ritual. Cold air, long benches, men in gray suits shuffling paper like magicians hiding tricks. Ava and I sat side by side at the front row of the gallery. Deputy Voss was behind us. Marianne, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, was present in public, her eyes hidden behind thick sunglasses, her name sealed under a pseudonym for her safety. The trial was not about Ricky. He was dead. But it was about everything around him. The conspiracy. The silence. The systems that let him erase her. And at the center of it all were the people who knew and chose to stay quiet. The first to testify was Marianne. She was shaking when she walked up, but not fragile, just afraid of what memory would do to her if she let it rise too fast. The judge allowed her to be questioned privately first. The courtroom held its breath while her testimony was played back on video. She spoke clearly, softly. He told me I'd never be believed, that no one would care if I disappeared, that girls like me, poor, mouthy, emotional, don't get second chances. So I left. And when I came back, I saw what they did with the silence I gave them. The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the stenographer's keys. But I'm done staying quiet. Then it was Ava's turn. She stepped up 17 years old, but taller than her frame, stronger than her history. She looked the judge directly in the eye and said, "I was raised by ghosts. Not because I wanted to be, but because the people who were supposed to protect the truth were more afraid of embarrassment than of evil." Then, looking toward the defense table, she added, "I might not remember everything that happened to me as a child, but I remember what was taken from me, my identity, my mother, my safety, and I remember who helped cover that up." That was the moment the courtroom shifted. Even the reporters stopped typing, because the girl they thought would be a quiet victim had turned out to be a blade. Then it was me. They asked the obvious first. "Did you fake mental illness, Mrs. Elkins?" "Yes." "Why?" "To protect a child. Because when I tried to speak the truth the first time, I was ignored. And when I screamed it, I was institutionalized." "And you don't regret that decision?" I stared at the attorney. "Would you rather I had stayed quiet and let him finish what he started?" He backed down. I continued, my voice steady. "I am not a madwoman. I am a witness who waited 17 years for someone to believe what they were too comfortable to see." But it was the fourth witness who changed everything. A nurse, retired now. She stood behind the podium, hands trembling. I remember Marianne. She came in crying, bruised. I did the intake. And what happened then? A man came into the hallway, clean-cut, charming, said he was her brother-in-law, said she was unstable and had violent hallucinations. "Did you believe him?" She paused. I did. And what happened after that? I was asked to leave the room by the hospital director. When I returned, the chart had been updated. Marianne was sedated. The record said she was suicidal. I never saw her again. "Did you file a report?" "No, I was afraid." Then she looked at Ava. "I'm not afraid anymore." There were others. The court heard testimony from two women who dated Ricky in the early 2000s. Both said they were manipulated, cornered, frightened. Neither had felt safe enough to speak before. One had even seen Marianne the night she ran, walking barefoot across the gas station parking lot carrying a trash bag full of clothes. "She asked me for help," she whispered, "and I told her I couldn't get involved. I've lived with that for 17 years. Her voice broke. "I hope this helps now." The defense tried to poke holes. They said it was all circumstantial. Old memories, emotional women, dead men. But the truth was heavier than their objections. And the public. They had already chosen their side. The town that once called me insane now handed me envelopes at the store that read, "Thank you." The girl who was once whispered about in hallways was now featured on the front page under the headline, "Ava Speaks," and "The Town Listens." Still, one question remained. Would justice come, or would they say it was too late? On the final day of testimony, Ava and I sat side by side on the witness bench as the verdict was read. Guilty. Of obstruction. Of falsifying medical records. Of perjury. Not for Ricky. He was gone. But for the ones who held the doors open for his crimes and closed them on his victims. The judge issued a statement. Silence does not absolve. It does not protect. And in this courtroom, it is no longer a shield. The courtroom burst into quiet applause. I didn't clap. I just cried. Because after 17 years, I was no longer a madwoman. I was heard. Outside the courthouse, Ava took my hand. "Do you feel lighter?" she asked. "No," I said. "I feel seen. That's different." She nodded. "I think I understand." Then she handed me something. A folded paper, her drawing. It was of me. Not wild-eyed or chaotic, but centered, calm, with a lantern in my hand walking through shadows. "You weren't crazy," she said. "No, you were brave." That night we went back to Marianne. She met us on the porch of her transitional home. No makeup, no dramatics. Just a mother seeing her daughter. I watched, she whispered. Every second, every word. Ava ran into her arms, and for the first time in 17 years, Marianne held her baby girl like she was never taken. They didn't cry, they just breathed. And I stood behind them quiet. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It never really was. We stayed for tea. Marianne was quieter now, but not small. She told us she'd been accepted into a trauma counselor training program. I want to help women who don't have a Maggie. I smiled. They'll be lucky to have you. Ava said they'll be lucky to have both of us. When we left, Ava looked back at the porch one last time. I don't think I'll ever stop being angry, she said. For what was taken. What could have been. You shouldn't, I replied. Anger is a map. Just don't live inside it. She nodded. And in the rearview mirror, I saw her eyes reflect the moonlight steady, unafraid. Just like her mother's. Just like mine. The quiet after the verdict felt unnatural. I had lived in chaos for so long, the pounding footsteps of paranoia, the sharp edge of secrets, the constant theater of madness that stillness now felt suspicious. Ava began sleeping with her window open again. Marianne planted lavender in her front yard. I started making soup. It wasn't much, but it was peace. Or at least the beginning of it. And it terrified me, because peace was vulnerable, and I didn't know how to live without a war. Ava's art changed first. Gone were the haunted sketches, girls screaming in locked rooms, faceless fathers' houses made of knives. Now she drew softness, her mother sitting in a sunbeam, hands tangled in paintbrushes. A self-portrait in watercolor's spine, tall eyes steady, and a new piece she wouldn't let me see. Not until it's done, she said. It's for all of us. She started a portfolio, submitted to a summer residency in Vermont. When the letter came, a yes, she didn't scream or jump. She just handed it to me with trembling fingers and whispered, "Is it okay if I go live my life now?" I hugged her tighter than I ever had. "Yes, baby, please do." Marianne found her rhythm slowly. At the shelter, she led group therapy for young women. Not as a savior, but as someone who had walked barefoot through fire and learned which cracks in the floor would hold your weight. Her voice never rose above a whisper, but her eyes, they told volumes. One night over tea, she said, "You know what no one tells you about surviving?" "What?" "That it's boring." She smiled. "It's dishes. It's wondering if you have enough detergent. It's people calling you brave when really you just want a nap." I laughed harder than I had in months, and for once I let it happen without guilt. I tried therapy. I sat across from a woman named Elise who looked 12 and listened like a priest. We talked about guilt, about performance, about how madness had become my armor and how terrifying it was to take it off now. "I don't know who I am without the act," I told her. "You're someone who loved too hard and lost too much," she said. "That's not madness. That's grief." "But grief doesn't end." "No," Elise said, "but neither does love." And that was the first time I cried in front of her, because I realized she was right. One afternoon, I found a box in the back of my closet. Not one of Ricky's, one of mine. Inside photos, ticket stubs, a note from Marianne in high school. "You're the only one who sees through him. Don't ever stop." There was a necklace Ava had made me at age 5, a lopsided string of buttons and beads. And beneath that, a Polaroid of me and Lillian on the porch, arms around each other, our younger selves full of secrets we hadn't yet named. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered, "I'm sorry." Not because she was innocent, but because we all were complicit in some way. In silence, in fear, in pretending not to see. The next day, Ava asked to visit Lillian's grave. She hadn't been since the funeral. I offered to come with her, but she shook her head. "This is between me and her." She came back hours later, tear-streaked but dry-eyed. "I didn't yell," she said. "Didn't even ask questions." "What did you say?" She paused. Then I told her I forgive her, even if she never asked me to. "And did that help?" A long silence. "It didn't hurt." We had a quiet dinner that night, the three of us. Ava cooked. Marianne lit candles. I washed dishes. No one said the word Ricky. No one mentioned the trial. But something hung in the air, finality. Like we were approaching the edge of something and finally ready to step into what came after. As Ava packed for Vermont, she asked me, "What will you do while I'm gone?" I laughed. "Try not to fake another psychotic break." She rolled her eyes. "I mean it." I paused. "I might write. About everything. About us." She smiled. Good. People need to hear it. Just change my name to something cooler. The night before she left, she gave me the finished painting. It was stunning. 3 women, one in shadow-tangled hair, wide eyes reaching upward. One in flame burning bright standing guard cloak of smoke trailing behind her. One in bloom face to the sky hair like vines light pouring from her chest. Marianne, me, Ava. The caption at the bottom, from the roots we rise. I hung it in the hallway where the mirror used to be, because from now on we would not reflect what others saw. We would create our own truth. The next morning, I drove her to the bus station. She hugged me 3 times before boarding. At the last moment, she leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for going crazy. It saved me." I laughed through tears. "I wasn't crazy, Ava." She grinned. "I know, but it was the best performance of your life." Then she waved, and she was gone. Off to live the life they tried to steal. Off to become more than the story they buried. I drove home in silence, past the old hospital, the church, the courthouse. Places that once held pain like stained glass holds light cracked, but still radiant. Back home, Marianne was watering the lavender. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything's beginning," I said. She nodded. "Feels like it." Then she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a key to what I asked. The storage unit, where I put the rest of the tapes. The ones I couldn't bear to hear alone. I held it tight. "Do you want to listen together?" She shook her head. "No. I want you to listen, and then decide what the world gets to know." I slipped the key into my pocket, not because I wanted more pain, but because the past deserved a record, so we could finally stop pretending it never happened. The wind picked up as we went inside, but this time I didn't check the locks, 'cause I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Ricky, not of the town, not of the truth, because the truth had set her free. And in doing so, it had set me free too. The key felt heavier than it should have. I turned it over in my palm as I stood in front of Unit 106 at the old storage lot on Sycamore Drive. The place smelled like dust and secrets. Rust peeled off the hinges like dead skin. I took a breath and unlocked the door. The metal groaned as it lifted, revealing a dim room cluttered with boxes, crates, and a few old suitcases. In the far corner beneath a blue tarp was the tape recorder, and beside it 8 labeled cassettes numbered in Marianne's handwriting. M1, M8. I sat cross-legged on the cold floor as if I were about to perform a ritual. Because I was. The last ritual of memory. The final seance with ghosts I could no longer run from. The first few tapes were familiar. Ricky's voice slurred and cruel. The same clipped threats, the same twisted justifications. "You think people like us get punished? No, we run things. We raise daughters who worship us." My fingers clenched the edges of the recorder. He had always spoken like he was untouchable because for a long time, he was. Tape 3 was different. It wasn't him speaking. It was Lillian. At first, I thought it was just background noise. Then I recognized her voice clear and nervous. She was talking to someone, maybe on the phone, maybe recorded in secret. I told him I wouldn't lie for him anymore, that if he touched her again, I'd go to the police. But he said he'd take Ava. I pressed pause. My heart hammered so hard I could barely breathe. She had known. She had tried. She had been trapped. I let the tape play. I didn't want to raise a child in fear, but I also didn't want him to win. So I took Ava. I filed the papers. I made up the story about Marianne being unfit. I thought, maybe if I held on long enough, Maggie would come back. Maybe she'd know what to do. Her voice broke. But I wasn't strong enough. I wanted to be. I just wasn't. I sat there frozen, the recorder buzzing faintly as the tape clicked to an end. For the first time in years, I missed her. Not the woman who lied, but the sister who tried. Tape 5 was short, 30 seconds. A baby crying. Then silence. Then Marianne whispering, "She has your eyes, Ricky, but she'll never know your name." It was like being punched in the throat. That baby was Ava. That moment that one was probably when Marianne decided to disappear. Not out of fear, but as a form of defiance. to vanish so her daughter could live free. Uh, Tape 6 changed everything. At first, I wasn't sure who the second voice was. Ricky spoke, but it wasn't his usual performance. He sounded cornered, defensive, and the other voice cold, sharp, official. A man. You need to clean it up. She won't talk. That's not a risk we take. You understand? But she's just a girl. So was the last one. Then static. Then a final line. You want your job, handle it. I rewound it 3 times to be sure I heard it right. Someone else had been involved. Not just someone covering for Ricky. Someone above him. Someone who gave orders. This wasn't just a predator hiding in a family. This was a network. Tape 7 was blank, except for a single sound. A scream. Raw. Ripped from someone's lungs. It only lasted 6 seconds. But I will never forget it. It wasn't Ava. It wasn't Marianne. It was me. Recorded from the night I'd faked my breakdown. They had recorded me and stored it. Like a trophy. Or a warning. Tape 8 was the last. And it was Ava. She must have been 6, maybe 7. She was singing, off-key, joyful. A nursery rhyme. London Bridge is falling down. Then Marianne's voice joined in soft cracking with emotion. My fair lady. Then quiet. Then one last line whispered, I hope someday she sings this to her daughter and tells her she was never crazy. Just strong. I sat there in the silence for a long time. The sun was low outside. My legs had gone numb. But my heart was burning. Because now I knew. Not just the facts. Not just the who or what. But the why. And the cost. I brought the tapes to Voss that evening. She listened stone-faced. Especially to tape 6. When it ended, she looked at me and said, We were only scratching the surface. I nodded. And what happens now? We dig deeper, harder, smarter. And this time, we don't stop. I handed her the folder I'd prepared, names, notes, theories. She smiled grimly. You're not done with this, are you? No, I said. But now, I know who I am doing it for. Back home, Marianne was reading. Ava had sent her a postcard from Vermont, a sketch of a willow tree swaying in the wind. I placed the recorder on the table between us. Marianne looked up. You listened. I nodded. There's more, always was. She closed her book. But at least now, it's ours again. Yes. Then I told her what I'd heard on tape 6. Her face darkened. You think they'll come for us again? I think they never stopped. Marianne leaned back. Well, she said this time we're not hiding. That night, I wrote my name on the folder. Maggie Elkins, witness, aunt, survivor. No longer silent. And beneath that, a single line. Let the world hear the mad woman. She never lied. My name is Maggie Elkins. And this morning, for the first time in 17 years, I woke up without rehearsing a lie. No madness to fake. No role to play. No locked drawer of truths I'm too afraid to open. Just sunlight on the curtains. Coffee in a chipped mug. And silence the kind that soothes, not suffocates. I've always believed that the truth doesn't set you free. It ruins everything first. It shatters families, rewrites your past, forces you to grieve people who are still breathing. But after that, if you survive the breaking, then comes the freedom. Ava wrote to me yesterday. A real letter, ink on paper. Vermont's colder than I thought, she wrote. But the mountains are beautiful. They make me feel small in a good way. She included a sketch of a house on a hill, big windows, surrounded by trees. Inside the house were 3 figures, one standing, one seated, one in the garden kneeling beside wildflowers. She didn't label them, but I knew who they were. Us. Not broken, not perfect. Just there. Together. Marianne visits often. We don't talk much about the past anymore. Not because we're afraid, but because it's no longer the loudest thing in the room. She's rebuilding her practice. She's dating again. She laughs without flinching. Sometimes I catch her staring at Ava's drawings, tears in her eyes. I missed all her firsts, she said once. But I'll be there for every second. That's the thing about love. It's not about what you missed. It's about what you choose to show up for now. As for me, I started writing, not just for the court or the public, but for the women like me, the ones who were called crazy when they were actually right. I write about the cost of silence, the sharp edge of survival, the way grief wraps itself around your ribs like armor, and the way healing doesn't always look like a sunrise. Sometimes it looks like a messy living room and a cat that won't leave your laundry alone. Sometimes it's just breathing. People still ask me if I regret it. The madness, the deception, the years spent in hiding. And I tell them this: if I had told the truth back then, no one would have listened. But because I waited, because I carried that secret like a wound and refused to let it rot, Ava is free now. Marianne is whole. And I'm finally me. Not Maggie the mad, just Maggie. Whole, flawed, fierce, free. The last page of my journal reads, "They buried the truth, but the truth grew roots, and the roots cracked the concrete, and from the cracks we rose." It's not a happy ending. It's not even an ending. It's just the moment the light reached the floorboards. The moment I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who chose not to disappear even when the world begged her to. And if you've ever felt like you're the only one who knows the truth, if they've ever called you dramatic, unstable, delusional, let me tell you something. You are not crazy. You are just the first to see the rot. So speak anyway, even if your voice shakes, even if they turn away. Because one day, the ones you love will hear you. And when they do, that's when the story truly begins. Thank you for listening to mine. If you've ever lived through silence, survived it, or broken it, I hope you know you are never alone again. Please share your story in the comments below. Your truth might be the key to someone else's freedom. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Grace's Truth, because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones we survive.